So last week we had certain interesting ideas. The concept of ha'oras ponov, where the Baruch Hashem projects, so to speak, his being. It's not a being, but his the way he appears to us and so on. That's ha'ora. And if he retains it or conceals it, so that produces really bad stuff. And I mentioned the concept of ha'ora as being tied to the concept of existence. The Russian presents ha'ora. Ha'ora means enlightenment or illumination. In essence, that's giving existence. If he denies it, so in essence, that's inferior existence or whatever. It's a negation of existence. So as a result of that, that is a negative thing, and so on. So ha'ora and Hester are the two fundamental principles of what the bria is really all about. So, anyway, then I mentioned the concept that the whole idea is deveikus, is to be attached to the deveikus, and that's the whole concept. And I explained the difference between deveikus, shleimus, and hatova, what the differences are and so on. And ultimately, it's to perfect our own being. And so on. The concept of perfection, obviously, it's the enhancement of being to the fullest extent possible. That's what it is. In other words, when you say somebody's perfect, what you're saying is that in a certain attribute, he has it all. Basically, for us, it's always relative. Nobody has it all. But when we say the Baruch Hashem is perfect, that means in whatever attributes he has assumed, he has the totality of that attribute. Nothing missing. So if we say the Baruch Hashem is about chesed, he does incredible chesed, kindness, right? And we say he's sholem, that means you can't be more about chesed than him. Why? Because there is no more chesed that exists. So how can you have it? Whatever, however you measure chesed. You know what I'm saying? So therefore what the Baruch Hashem has is the greatest amount of chesed, if that's what he assumes, and it's perfect because nothing more exists. So in a certain sense, perfection means the totality of everything. The totality of whatever's available, he's got. See?
Even potential.
What?
Even potential.
Yeah, even potential has a totality. Means this is the most potential that can be had. Sort of, so when we say the Baruch Hashem is strong, he has the totality of strength. There is no more to be had, so to speak, and all the attributes.
It says Ha-Gadol, Ha-Gibor. This is it.
Who?
Shmona Esrei. Ha-Gadol, Ha-Gibor. Because this is Gvura. It is Gvura. It's not like
he has
some Gvura, this Gvura. This is the epitome of Gvura.
Yes. Yeah. He's got it all. The totality of the phenomenon called Gvura, whether it be actual or potential, he has. So therefore he's perfect in his strength. You see, same thing with his intellect, God's intellect. The totality of whatever could be understood, he's got. So that's why the Baruch Hashem is perfect being, because since the Baruch Hashem is existence itself, at least that's where he manifests himself to us, the totality of that is he's got. Very important distinction of what true perfection really is. Anyway, yeah, so that's what we had more or less from last week. Yeah. Yeah. So what the Rachal is trying to do now is trying to set up. Obviously, what the Baruch Hashem wants is that we should become perfect. We should become sholem. How do you achieve shleimus? Right? How do you achieve shleimus? Right?
Why does he want us to become sholem?
That's his ratzon.
Does that have to do with the hatava?
Well, shleimus is the hatava. The question is, how do you become sholem? And the answer is deveikus. When you are dovek to him, you are sholem. By definition.
So achieving deveikus is really achieving shleimus.
Correct. Exactly. So the mechanism or the state in which a person is able to achieve shleimus then is the objective, And the mechanism, right, or the method, is deveikus. That's how you do it. And shleimus is the greatest hatov of all.
How does deveikus correlate to shleimus? They're different things, really.
Deveikus is a state of is a state of connection. Shleimus is the being.
Right.
Shleimus refers to the being itself. The being is sholem because it's in a state of attachment. And that to the being is the greatest benefit.
I say being attached to the source of energy.
What?
Being attached to the source of energy, basically. It's
sort of,
yeah.
So this is like let's say Yakov, to use the mashal of Hashem as a sort of like a power plant, and the amount of connectivity you have to that power plant. So you just have to add on connectivity.
Yes, so
and that automatically brings the electricity into you.
The
that
voltage
makes your light bulb go brighter, or whatever it is.
Exactly. So muscle is good muscle. Exactly, you know. And this is what the Hashem wants. You know, why does he want it? It's unknown. And this is hatava. Why? Because that the greatest, remember I said the greatest hatava is what? Is existence. The greatest benefit of all is to be. And being itself has degrees. To be in the greatest possible being is the greatest thing of all.
So how did the nitty gritty? I'm sorry, intangible. How did the nitty gritty, to use the word, mitzvahs, like let's say putting on tefillin and davening?
Oh, that's later on.
How does this? But I'm just saying, how does this equal shleimus eventually?
Wait, that's the instruments. The mitzvah is the instrument to attain deveikus. It's an instrument. It's not the objective. The objective of a Jew isn't to a mitzvah. The objective of a Jew is to achieve shleimus, to a state of deveikus. That's it. You know, how do we do it? We do it basically through mitzvahs. That is the instrumentality, or that is the vehicle, the device, the tool to achieve the shleimus. You know, and so that's the correct perspective of all these concepts. A lot of people, it's muddled in their mind. They know what this is, they don't know what that is. It's like all the same thing, you know. But it's not. They're really distinct ideas. And so on. Also what I spoke about last week, which I think was very important, what is deveikus from an emotional level? You know, we said, well, this is deveikus from an abstract level. You're devek to the besorim. But from an emotional level, what is it? What does it feel like? You know? I think the last week's year, that was a highly unusual perspective. You don't hear that kind of stuff. And so on. I've never heard anything like that from any of the Balei Musa, Musa Shmus, whatever. You know? But deveikus is in a very intense emotional state, which is, like I said, then there's a tremendous yearning and longing to be unified, connected to the Hashem. And I used an example, romantic example. Hope they forgive me. But that's really what it is. That's what Shir Hashem is really all about. That's exact Moshel Shir Hashem usage, you know. Navshi Dovku, you know, someone, you know, and so many different kind of shleimus expressions that the Shir Hashem uses. And in many ways, the Moshel is all romantic in that sense, you know. But anyway, that's what it is. And that's a very difficult state to achieve. And I mentioned how, you know, how I want to achieve that. I want to achieve that by one, knowing who God is. You need to know who the Rebbeinu Shalom is. Two, you need to know his relationship to you, which is total chesed, in that sense. That God loves you, and so on. That he is completely given over to your benefit. Well, that includes rachmanis, mercy, compassion, or includes kindness, loving kindness. You need to know that. You need to know that really, not, you know, read some safe words. You have to know it, and you have to, in many ways, see it b'chush. And also, one of the greatest ways is tefillah also, because what tefillah does is it intensifies what's called the reality of God to you. You know, most people don't talk to themselves, you know. So when you talk to Baruch Atah, you're really talking to the Marshal, you know. And if you really focus on tefillah, after a while, your mind begins to understand that, I'm really talking to somebody, and there's hopefully somebody listening, so it's a communications, and so on. And the communication, what it does is it verifies the reality of God, verifies that God can fulfill your requests, because what you're praying to Him for, And as such, hopefully God will fulfill your requests, and so on. There's nothing better than verifying the presence and the relationship of a being than communication. It's really what it is, Shema is not a communication. When you say Shema Yisroel, it's a belief statement. I believe Shema Yisroel Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The concept of Shema is a belief statement, but it's not a communication. Tefillah is a communication, you see. So therefore, this is what happens when we do that, and as a result of that, a person can get levels of deveikus and so on.
What's the difference between that sort of meditation and meditation in general, where people can feel certain heightened awarenesses and certain things? My question is that, how do you know it's not just another state of heightened awareness that... how do you know if you're fooling yourself that just something, or you're actually connecting to something others?
Well, that's why you say Shema first. What is Shema? Shema is a statement of belief. I believe. What is Shema? What's a statement of belief?
Well, I understand that we're only talking to people who are ma'aminim.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual activity, the actual exercise, experience, how do you know between, let's say, there's meditation and there's meditation. There's meditation
yeah.
kedusha, but how do you know you're actually connecting to that, as opposed to just fooling yourself like, I just happen to be feeling something nice,
Well, I don't know, my fooling, if you believe there is a God, and you believe that He is one, that He's your King, and you accept His sovereignty and so on, right? You believe that, right? Forget about why you believe that, then you have to go further back. But if you make that statement, and you truly believe that statement, right, then you talk to God. That's the next thing. So if you experience something talking to a person, you're not fooling yourself because you believed in God, Maybe you have to go back to the original. How do you believe in God? That way it goes back to the,
I'm not talking about
and so on, I mean, the truth is, in the end, Rabbi Akiva was right, The greatest confirmation of the existence of God is the impossibility of this creation to be without God. It's impossible. How anybody can even deny that is absurd. The probability. I mean, it's like, you look at anything, you want to prove there's a God, just look at the flower. We don't even realize how complex that flower is. It's beyond belief. You look at any organism, and so on. And there are many other types of proof. Many other types of, proofs that are impossible to have occurred without the concept of a supreme being or a creative force, a creator that is created, and so on and so forth, In the end, I remember I once watched this, there are videos of different synchron courses, so I once watched the biology course, long course, it's on video. The professors are top-notch. He's a very clear hasbara. They explain very well, very organized. It's a whole company that puts out these videos, And I remember that I was watching this video course on biology, It was just astounding. It's astounding. The guy was describing, the whole concept of DNA. 3.1 or 2 billion pairs. You know what billions are? It's and the DNA, which is a spiral, it's really a double helix. It's 2 spirals, they call it that. It's like a ladder with rungs, and the rungs have 4 chemicals, and so on. They say if you took the DNA out of the cell, it would stretch 6 feet. 6 feet, but the punishment did is he took it like a spring, and he squashed it into a DNA. 3.2 billion, it's just beyond belief. That determines the entire human structure. And so on. And then the cell was incredible. how the cell lets in stuff and how it takes out stuff, and all the little things. The whole concept of a cell is textbooks after textbooks. A little cell that you can't even see with the naked eye. It was just beyond belief. The complexity of a cell. I'm not even talking about a tissue and an organ, which is cells, and I'm not talking about the brain.
And they don't believe in the Creator.
What? And they don't believe it. It's like, how stupid can a guy be to look at this kind of stuff and not believe in a creator, or to think it's evolution? Evolution? Maybe a guy can fool himself and say, well, one thing evolved. But we're talking about 100 million species evolving, all different and so on. It's like 100 million different evolution things going on. Each one is different. I once told you there's 300,000 species of beetles.
How
Just
about
beetles.
the physicist Stephen Hawking?
Yeah,
It's mind-blowing.
I felt sorry for that guy. He's there's Rahmanas on the guy anyway.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. Because look, there's a lot of explanations. Because they don't really want to believe in God, so therefore they came up with a great. Well, it's not even great, but they came up with something to hang on to, which is called evolution.
They come on and getting clouds for only was man, only,
Yeah.
they didn't really believe in idols. Who believes in that?
Just to have the
they wanted to
private-
be martyrs and nuts with themselves.
Yeah, they wanted the women. That's all. Period. Who cares about the theory? So on and so forth. It's like whatever. Anyway, so therefore, just to recognize the problem is you have to see it. You have to realize the complexity of a cell. If you don't, why it's nothing and so on. But anyway, those are the incontrovertible proofs of the existence of a being that has an intellect so far superior to anything we can absolutely imagine. It's just beyond belief how any of this can happen. So, but anyway, and then you begin. So that's the basis of your emunah, and from your emunah come Shkriya Shema, and then the tefillah, and so on and so forth. And that's just the. Then there's a whole concept of historical validity, which I'm not going to go into, and so on. That itself was a whole thing, which I went to a long time ago. Anyway, okay, so we are now at the point where we understand this. These are the objectives. Okay. Now, what Ramchal now says, that in order for this to occur, where the Moshe will have a being that will be dovuk, that will be attached to him and so on, right? That there are certain conditions that he must create. First, as I mentioned, he has to create the being itself. The being really is who? It's a human being. What's interesting here is that Ramchal does not mention Klal Yisrael at all, and from later on you see why. Because the tachlis of the bria has nothing to do with Jews. Really, that was the original plan. Most people don't even know that. The tachlis of the bria, or the one who was the recipient of that shleimus, is min honushi.
Bishvil Yisrael really means Bishvil. It was supposed to be Bishvil Adam, but instead it turned into Yisrael because they were the ones to.
No.
So what does it mean Bishvil Yisrael?
Oh, very good question. What's Bishvil Yisrael? Because the Medrash clearly says Bishvil HaTorah, which is called Rashus, right?
Okay.
Be Rashus. Were they Rashus? And who's referred to Rashus? Torah is called Rashus, right? And Klal Yisrael is called Rashus. So that would seem that initially it was the Jews that was the objective of the Bria. And the answer is, of course not. What is the real name of the Jews? It's not Yisrael. It's what?
I think very much.
No, it's not Adam either. I mean, we are an Adam. No, it's Ivri. A Jew has, the concept of a Jew is nationalistic. Avram Avinu was called Avram or Ivri, the Hebrew. The word Aver, whatever means, let's say it came from beyond the river, Euphrates or whatever. Aver and all. Aver means the other side, So Avram Avinu was an individual who called, hey, he's the guy who came from the other side. So therefore that name stuck, Ivri, right? And then we are called Ivri, Hebrews. Our real name are the Hebrews, from the word Ava, Ivri, Later on, that's the nationalistic identity. We are Hebrews. You know? Later on, as time went on, what happened? The Jews dispersed. 10 tribes were lost. So the most prevalent of all the tribes was Yehuda. So then the Jews were referred to not as Hebrews, but as Jews, Yehuda, Yud, Yehudi, Mordechai HaYehudi, right? So the word Jew comes from the word Yehuda, and so on. So we are really, first we are Hebrews, and now we are Yehudi, Yehudim, whatever, Jews. Where did Yisroel come in? You know what I'm saying? Where does the word Yisroel come in? Because Yisroel does not refer to a nation at all. Yisroel refers to an ability, property. It doesn't refer to a nation.
Yisroel is the name of Yakov.
Who?
Yisroel is the name of Yakov.
That's where it started, yes. But before, Avram was not called Yisroel, and neither was Yitzchak. So the question is, why not? Even that we know.
Well, because Avram included more than just the Yisrael, it also includes the Arabs.
No.
It also includes the, but we're not.
No,
We're Bnei
Avram.
Yisrael, not Bnei Avram, because it's more exclusive.
Was Esav an Ivri, a Hebrew? Of course he was. So was Ishmael. They were called Hebrews. Forget about the fact that they're no longer Hebrews. But, they were called Hebrews because they came from Avram, he was called a Hebrew. But you only find the word Yisroel only coming when? By Yakov. You don't find Avram Avinu is never referred to as Yisroel, neither is Yitzchak. Right? Yet the Medrash says that because of Rashis, or rather Yisroel, the world was created. So we need to align those two ideas. And the answer is that Yisroel does not refer to a nation. It rather refers to the specific ability that a nation has to do the tikun of the bria. That's what it refers to. In other words, what the Baruch said is the following. What is the essential characteristic of a Jew? What is the uniqueness of a Jew, really? What is it? Who?
Second degree.
He can do the tikun of the bria, or it's reversed, the kilkul. He can rectify creation, or he can destroy it. How? No, it's true. Okay. No, but what's the aftermath? How does a Jew rectify creation?
Removing Zahama?
No. He does that. No. What is this specific property that a Jew has that he can do the tikun? Who?
Yes.
No. I mean, these are conditions, obviously. No, that's not what it is. The neshama is what does it, because we have the neshama. No.
We mentioned everything that exists.
How's the previous generation?
No.
Being Abraham.
I mean, what else?
What else is there? No. Well, fortunately, you guys don't know, and that's why I have to continue saying these sure. You need to understand, this is the uniqueness of the Jew. That he can do the tikun. He can rectify, he can correct, he can restore or repair. All the same thing. The creation of the world. From a deficient state to a perfected state. How? What's the lever, the dial? That means the Jew controls a dial. What is that dial?
The Torah?
No.
But also Hashem.
No, a dial is that's an instrument. No. What specific property? What specific property does a Jewish person have that he is able to do the tikun of the bria? That is the question.
Yes, it will.
No. I will tell you. the greatest ha'ora and hester. Remember I just said that? What is ha'ora? Ha'ora is when God projects his being. We call it a shefa or hashpo. He's mashpia. To mashpia means to project. It means to influence, but really it's a projection where he sends forth energy, whatever you want to call it. It's not really energy, but it's some type of a projection of the Ein Sof. He projects that. Okay? But also, just like God can project that, he can also withhold it. When God projects, or rather withholds, what is that activity called? When God who?
Simpson?
Yes, tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is a unique operation. Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum means to contract, to restrict, or to restrain. The Rebbe is mitzamtzem his presence. Tzimtzum. And the Rebbe created the concept of tzimtzum. Because, what do you mean God can contract? It doesn't literally mean it, but the Rebbe is able to restrict his presence, where you will not experience him. That's incredible. That's impossible. Because it's mole kolod's kavoda. Right? The presence of God pervades all. It has to, because why? Because of his existence, right? Then obviously whatever exists he's got to be there to make it exist. You know what I'm saying? If he's not there, it doesn't exist. You see. So therefore, mole kolod's kavoda means that the Moshe pervades, occupies the totality of reality, which makes him astoundingly big. You know, sometimes we think of God as some kind of one being, you know, but then you realize something, that according to scientists, the universe is 13.7 billion light years, and 1 light year is a distance, not a time. 1 light year is 6 trillion miles. So 13.7 times 6 trillion gives you a number, right? But we realize that if the Deveikus has to pervade that, so Deveikus has to be unbelievably large, yes? And then we realize that that's only the physical universe. There's also all the dimensions. There's Olam Yetzirah, the world of Yetzirah and Bria and Atzilus, right? And then there's beyond that, and so on. And wait a minute, that means God's got to be beyond belief. The size of God is beyond belief. We don't think of devotion like that. We think of it as a single point. There he is. See, I localized him. See, he's right over there looking at me, you know? What are you looking at me? The entire creation is within him. Could you imagine the size of God? Oh, wait a minute, man. You know what I'm saying? But we don't usually think of it that way, you know, or else we just be overwhelmed by his size, you know, and so on, you know. But anyway, so the question is, why could you have tzimtzum? And the idea is that tzimtzum is a created phenomenon. It's an operation where that restricts the presence of God in certain areas, wherever he wants. That is an unbelievable operation. So what the Moshe said is this. Now you understand what a Jew is. He said to a Jew, I mean later on, but originally he said to Adam Rishon, I am going to give you the dial of tzimtzum. You can dial me one way and I come in. You can dial me another way and I increase the tzimtzum, which means I'm gone. Not literally, but figuratively, right? The koyach of tikun or kilkul is the koyach to regulate tzimtzum itself, which determines the amount of ha'ora or hester, the amount of divine presence or the amount of divine absence. You see, that's the greatest power that ever existed is the one who controlled tzimtzum. There's nothing greater than that. Why? Because ha'ora, God's presence or illumination, creates existence, and his absence removes existence. Can't beat that. So the koyach of a Jew is that he is able to control tzimtzum itself. Wow. That's unbelievable. That's almost the same thing as saying I can create or discreate. I can make and not make. Now, the question is, what do you mean the Baruch does that? He's not forced. And the answer is he voluntarily submits to the actions of a Jew. This is the Nakuda. So, therefore, the identifying characteristic of a Jew, that he's able to do the tikun, or the kilkul, reverse, right, is predicated on what? His ability to control the phenomenon of the operation called tzimtzum. That's what it is. And tzimtzum is the most basic of all operations in the bria. Either God is here, or he is not here, figuratively, not literally, because he's always here. He's got to be everywhere, right? But all of a sudden, you don't see him. He's gone, absent. Very important concept. And the Jew has it. The Jew is able to control the tzimtzum. You know, you guys should walk out here and just like swell-headed. You know, it's unbelievable that I can control the presence or absence of God. Through what? Through my acts. Thinking, thought, dibur, and maisa.
That's Yisroel.
That's a Yisroel, correct. That's the meaning of a Yisroel.
That's what I mean, kisarisa.
Yeah.
Okay, and it wasn't just the malach of Esav, it was Hashem. He meant,
Yeah, well, yeah,
he
yeah.
meant the whole,
Yeah.
all the way up
Yeah.
to Hakadosh.
So in the beginning, we see a remarkable concept that the Moshe didn't want to give it to one person, rather an ummah, a nation. He gave it to mankind. That's why Adam Rishon wasn't Jewish. I always start off the shir as many times. Was Adam Jewish? Obviously he wasn't Jewish. The first Jewish guy, or first Hebrew, was Avraham Avinu. That's a national.
But he was a Yisroel.
But he was Yisroel, yes. Actually, he was what's called probation. He was a probationary Jew. That's the original concept of probation. You know?
Possible to get kicked off.
So what did Moshe do? He said to Adam Rishon, listen Adam, I'm giving you the koich of tzimtzum, which means that I will voluntarily submit to your acts. Again, three different dimensions: thinking, speaking, or acting.
It's funny how submitting to Hashem, submitting to the acts, in order for us to control, we have to submit back to Hakadosh Baruch Hu.
Well, okay, but wait, let's go slow. So we now understand something very fundamental, that the Jew, the concept of Yisroel, is an individual that has the koich of tzimtzum, or the koich to control tzimtzum. And he's given that koich. With that koich, you can do the tikun. Because if I can bring God in, there you are, that's the tikun. If I can't bring him in, that's the kilkul. You see? So what we really control is tzimtzum, therefore we can do the tikun, or the kilkul, or the damage, and so on. And that was originally given to Adam Rishon. Adam, you got it. So therefore, who was the first Yisroel? Who? Adam. And so therefore the Medrash is right. Bishul Reishis, right? And who was it? Yisroel, because Yisroel is called Reishis. The Roshim said, if I have a Yisroel, I'm going to continue this bria. I don't have a Yisroel, what does that mean? If you don't have anybody that can control creation, right?
That's the point.
Then what's the point? There's no tikun possible. So therefore, Adam Rishon was a Yisroel, but he was not a Hebrew. That's the difference. Well, as we will see later, the Moshe waited 2,000 years. Because everybody was a Yisroel. Everybody. Interesting. It wasn't just Adam, Cain and Hevel, and so on. You know. And then what happened after
Even
2,000 years?
Paro. Paro.
Who?
The Paro.
No, Paro was not.
Why?
Because after the haflaga, the flood, right? The Baruch gave 2,000 years for mankind to do the tikun, but they didn't do it. So Baruch decided, I'm going to take away the ability of tikun.
But it was only by matan Torah, no, that it happened.
No. I'm going to hold that for a side. I'm going to take away the ability of tikun and give it only to Avraham Avinu. But Avraham Avinu had it because he was among the 70 nations. Avraham Avinu, by the way, was one of the 70. Yeah. He was the last, the last of the 70. So the 70 individuals, where there were 70 nations, right, they all had the power of tikun. You know, we look at the do hamabel and the do haflaga, we laugh at these guys. I mean, I laugh, but we say nebuch these guys. What do you mean nebuch these guys? These guys had such unbelievable power to do the tikun, but they didn't do the kilkul. So the Moshe decided that I'm going to take away everybody's ability to do the tikun, and I'm going to only allow it to remain with Avram Avinu. And that's what the bris bein besorim is. The covenant between pieces. What is this? Well, the Moshe said, you are going to do the tikun. You and your descendants. Everybody else is gone. Which was terrible for mankind. Why? Because if mankind no longer has the ability of tikun, what becomes obvious? Who? Who? No.
There's no point for them.
There's no point. Kill him. I hate to be so nasty, but you should know, nothing exists without a purpose. If a thing has no purpose, guess what? It doesn't exist. It becomes extinct. That's what it is. Why is it you look in the wild, you know, there's certain animals becoming more and more extinct? Why? How could the Moshe allow that? Mankind can't destroy if they're needed for the tikun. And the answer is because their necessity to do the tikun is gone. So therefore mankind is allowed to destroy them.
Don't save the penguins.
What?
Don't save the penguins.
Don't say the penguins, yeah.
It wasn't Avram Goyim that they got hooked up to Avram, that they get tikun through Avram?
Well, here's what happened. Now that Avram Avinu took over the whole tikun process, right? So the question is, well, what do you do for the Goyim? Because their existence is meaningless because they can't do the tikun anymore. So the Moshe said no. The Moshe had rachmim on the Goyim. They want to destroy them because after all, they are Tzelem Elokim in that sense, and they messed up. No, they cannot control Tzimtzum anymore. So the Moshe then decided that I will allow them to exist because they will assist the Jews to do the tikun. Should I say ha? The purpose of Goyim, which is incredible, is to assist the Jews to do the tikun. Isn't that interesting? Have they been doing this?
They're doing a rotten job.
He has a
Rotten job.
good title to it.
All the kilkul that Jews do is because of the Goyim. They have no idea. That's why it's incredible what they're doing. It's literally committing suicide. Every generation, these guys commit suicide. And in our generation, you know, between, Russia and all these guys, the Arabs, they're committing suicide. That's what they're doing. Because their whole survivability, their whole raison d'etre, as they say in French, the whole reason for being is to assist the Jews. But when they do assist the Jews, right, they still don't do the tikun. They allow the Jews to do the tikun, but their schus is that you'll enable me, you'll help me do the tikun, therefore I can now, God is mashpia me, and I am mashpia the goy. Yes, the shefa of the goy comes through the Jew. That's what it means that 10 goyim will hold on to the beggar of a Jew. It says that in the Novi. What does that mean? Because each goy, believe it or not, each Jew has goyim attached to him. You know? You don't know where they are. You know?
And
You ever find them, you get them work for you, free labor, But every Jew has goyim attached to him, and when he does the tikun and so on and so forth, that goy is able to take off. Who?
Cleaning lady.
That's number one.
oh, you found one.
But she doesn't believe it because she takes money.
That's why they hate us, I guess.
Well, okay, you're touching into a very interesting area called anti-Semitism. But anyway, so this is what happened. So the justification of goyim comes through the fact that they can assist the Jew. So therefore the Moshe allowed them to keep a nefesh. A goy has a nefesh, a spiritual nefesh. The neshama has 5 parts. The lowest is called the nefesh. Goyim have a nefesh.
But without the nefesh, wouldn't they just be mindless zombies?
Without the nefesh, they would be animals.
I'm saying animals don't really have a thought process or anything.
Well, it's not only that. You can have...
I'm just saying without the nefesh, without any sort of spirituality other than the nefesh of Bahami, they'd just be mindless zombies. They won't be able to think.
No, that's not true.
They're like a
No.
dolphin. A dolphin is
No. What gives a person his ability to think?
The consciousness that a person has.
No, a gorilla is conscious. He looks at you. You know, a lion looks at you and he's probably thinking dinner. If it wasn't for these bars, I could have, you don't even...
So animals have self-awareness?
The lion doesn't even think about MPGS.
It's
You know
animals
what I'm
have
saying? He's got dinner standing in front of me, he can't get to you, no?
Animals
No.
have self-awareness.
There's such a thing as a human that doesn't have a nefesh. Because the concept of humanity is not rooted in the nefesh, in the soul. It's rooted in the nefesh tachtoino, the lower soul. Some people call it the nefesh abahamis.
So that's what gives the self-awareness and the...
Correct.
and
Yeah,
the-
except we have the greatest part of it, or the greatest type.
Degree, maybe.
We have the greatest degree of nefesh tachtoino.
So you can have people walking around and they're totally cut off from the roof. Yes,
Correct.
okay.
So that's why the Hashem allowed the guy to keep his nefesh, or else he could not have a chayk in olam haba.
What does the nefesh al give a guy? What
His-
abilities does he able
The
to?
connection to olam haba.
Is that manifest in this world at all?
Olam haba? No.
That does the nefesh al affect him in this world?
No, I would imagine it probably does. It probably gives him his sense of spirituality.
Well, some become Jewish.
I think if you didn't have that, then I would think that a person doesn't even have a nefesh, not tachtoina, but the nefesh of the elyoina. There's the nefesh elyoina, the nefesh tachtoina. The nefesh elyoina is the real neshama, because that consists of 5 parts, right? You have the nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, and yechida. 5 different parts of the nefesh
lost 4.
elyoina.
They lost 4 of them.
They lost 4, correct? Yes. So therefore they have a keshet to ilam haba. Means because they have a nefesh. A nefesh is that entity that connects you to the higher worlds. Without that, you can't connect to the ruchnias. But you still can be a man. You could be an adam. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, except but your nefesh tachtoina is unbelievably
Yeah, it's happened
elevated.
in history that human beings were completely just cut off from the nefesh al.
I'm not aware of that kind of incident.
By the haflaga, some say they became monkeys.
Yeah, there's a medrash. There's 1/3 in the door of Enosh. 1/3 of the world was flooded. This is interesting because they're also tremendous chaytim. So the medrash says, medrash Rabbah, that 1/3 of the world was flooded. That was like the precursor to the Mabul, you know. But it says also, actually, excuse me, but also says that in the which is interesting, we went to that medrash, you know. The medrash says that in the door it's not haflaga. Yes. 1/3 of the world was flooded, and 1/3 of the world turned into apes. Yeah. That's why when you see an ape, you have to make mishana habrias. You have to buy an elephant too. But anyway, you know, an ape, contrary to Darwin, right?
The other way.
He says the other way, right? That we come from apes, right? Apes come from man. Interesting. That's the measures. Yeah. Apes, the primates, come from man. That was the oynish. That's why they look so human. You know. You know what's funny is the difference between a human and a chimpanzee. I think 99% of the DNA is identical. 1% of the DNA is different. That's what makes a human as opposed to a chimpanzee or an ape. But anyway, the Medrash says that the apes, the primates, come from man as an oynish, which is interesting and so on. I think that occurred in the door of English. But anyway, in the door of the map, and so on. But in any case, so therefore, what the Baruch did is he severed the ability of the goy to control Tzimtzum. Therefore, he cannot do the tikun, but he allowed them existence at a spiritual level because they would assist the Jews. Then what the Baruch did is that he decided that he'll give mankind one more chance to restore the totality of the neshama, to be equal to a Jew. That was, yeah. And that's what the Medrash is, where he went around to every nation and asked, "You want the Torah?" You know, and they said no, for each one for different reasons. You know, Asa, for instance, Edom. So they said, well, what's in it? Well, you can't kill. Killing, I mean, that's our way of life. He went to Yisroel and they said, you can't steal. Well, what's in it? You can't steal. Stealing? Well, that's how we live. And so on. Each one rejected it. Now, does it literally mean that the Rebbe went around because we don't find that in recorded history. I mean, how did he do it? So there are different ways of learning it. It could be that he somehow gave certain insights into leaders of these people, and they went around preaching, we got to change our ways, we got to become more spiritual. That's one way of learning. Another way of learning is that he measured the spiritual level of each nation. And he said that it is so low, they will not accept the Torah. It's just too low. There are different ways of interpreting that medrash. But the main idea of that medrash is that was the last opportunity or chance of these individuals to reclaim the totality of spirituality that is given to a Jew. And they rejected it. But he did allow...
They didn't lose anything about the Torah?
No, they never. It was the last chance to reclaim. They didn't lose anything. But what's interesting is even though, as a nation, the Jews are the only nation that can do the tikun, but individuals, goyim, can come back because there were goyim in the people that could have taken it. In other words, the totality of the nation, no way. But there were goyim in the nation, individuals that either were on a spiritual level, or whatever. So it's not fair. Some guy, some Amorite, the Amori and so on. So one guy can say, hey, I would have taken it. You went to the whole nation. But so those are the people that are gerim. So they can come back as individuals, but they have to join Klal Yisrael. See? So they can come back as a Masakim, but they have to become part of it. They have to become Jewish. They can't do it and remain an Amorite, Amori. Whereas before they could have, had they accepted the Torah. So therefore, but even though Avram Avinu, right, made a covenant with God, an agreement with God, right, and he became Yisroel, but that was called probationary. Because the rule is that if a Masera, if a tradition remains with a nation, or rather with a person, for 3 generations, then it will never dissolve, disappear. That's why the first one to be called Yisroel was Yakov, not Avram. It began with Avram, it maintained with Yitzchak, but it was finalized with Yakov. And even then, it needed him to go through Esav, the whole business, what he had to go through. And it's only after Lavan and all that he got the name Yisroel, and therefore Yisroel now becomes a permanent feature of Klal Yisrael. That is the history of mankind. Very interesting history. So now you understand what the origin of the Jews, that the concept of Yisroel does not refer at all to a Jew. It refers to a person that has a neshama, complete neshama, right? And that neshama, because it's connected to all the olamas, can do the tikun. Now what's the fundamental property of a neshama that can do the tikun? The answer is control of tzimtzum. Yeah, that's what it is. And that's the greatest of all powers. We don't even realize, when we think about something that's a dvar mitzvah, we don't realize we undo a tzimtzum.
Because we don't see it, we don't feel it.
Yeah, well, obviously, exactly. So in essence, the Jews are the most powerful people that have ever lived, other than the first 2,000 years. In fact, the Ramchal says later on something which is so strange, which is, and you begin to understand. He said that even though Jews look like Goyim, we look like them, we're human and they're human, he said the difference really between a Jew and a Goy is that we're really a different species. We're much a different species than a Goy. Readers Goy would go crazy if they heard this. But the truth is that we have the power of to enhance or undo tzimtzum, and therefore the power of tikun, that makes us into a different species altogether. Malach can't do this. Nobody can. Now, besides the fact, so the Jew is the only one that can do what? Again, he can undo tzimtzum or create tzimtzum. Therefore, he can do tikun or undo tikun. Right? And therefore, what's the third level? It starts off with tzimtzum. And therefore, we could do the tikun.
Shleimus.
And if we do the tikun, we can do shleimus, but more realistically, what can we do therefore? We can change reality. Change reality. Because that's what it does. Ha'ora changes reality. Hester changes reality. Therefore, the Jew is never what? Stable. He's always either going up or down. It's amazing. A Jew goes up or down because the bria goes up and down. Because we can control the tzimtzum. So therefore, the Jew, his status never remains the same. It's funny. You get up in the morning, one status. You go to sleep at night, it's a different status. Depending on what you did. There is no creature except one
Why?
in all of creation whose status as a being can change. Except one, besides the Jews. Who's that?
Satan?
Who?
Satan?
Yes, the sun. Why? Because if we can undo tzimtzum, we bring in ha'ora, illumination. You bring in illumination, you do the tikun. You do the tikun, so therefore the Sultan has to give up whatever or he took, right? That you sinned and you gave him your or. He's got to give it back. So his status diminishes. You do chet, right? Do chet, you increase tzimtzum, you increase hester, you increase chesson, right? And you give the Sultan your energy.
So we're saying, by when you effect tzimtzum, the R really comes down, just it goes straight to the Satan.
Yes, correct.
So that's really what had the he is really the
He's the
embodiment of the
recipient.
Hester.
Yes, well, yeah. So therefore you increase tzimtzum. So you increase kilkul, you increase the ore that goes to the Sultan, which means you increase him, his klippus.
But he himself doesn't have the power to change. He just has
No,
to change.
he's got to wait for you. You're the one that can control Bria and him. But in essence, there's only two beings. Their status changes. Your status can change, and his status, as a result, indirectly. So you can change your status directly. You can change his status indirectly. That's it. Other than these two individuals, or rather beings, the Jew and the Sultan, everything created is exactly at the state it was created.
Stagnant.
What?
Stagnant.
Stagnant.
We can make him in a monkey.
Making him into a monkey? You know, I want to tell you something interesting. Who is the greatest, what is the greatest enterprise known to man? And who is in charge of that enterprise? What is the greatest venture ever known?
Tikun.
Google.
No.
Kilkul.
No. What is the greatest enterprise ever done? And who is responsible for the
I
building?
mean, the Satan, messing us up. I mean, that's...
Yes.
What
that's
does it mean by enterprise?
Enterprise means
business.
engagement, whatever you're doing. You know, it's funny. The Sultan, in all the terrible things he's done, if you think about it, he's the greatest. I've never seen a businessman like that, you know. He gets everybody to sin. Everybody. When you talk about monkey, make him a monkey. We're the monkeys. We're the monkeys. Every day you go by and you're a monkey. You know? And then you go from monkey to be a baboon, which is even worse. You know, I know it's like, then there's baboon, give me something that you turn to an orangutan. I mean, whatever's going on here, he makes absolute fools of us. In fact, you could see the koich of the Sultan by the degradation of man. You know? The koich, you know? You look at simple things, you know? What do they pay a baseball player these days? What do they pay him? $35 million for a 5-year contract? Excuse me, you're paying a guy $35 million? Why? Because he knows how to hit a ball? Of course, because he brings in the business and so on. But that's a mockery of MS. How could you pay a person that kind of money for zero, for junk, for nonsense? Meanwhile, the guy who's a college professor, who's teaching Chokhmah, right?
Baseball at least is fun. They pay Jay-Z $70 million a year just to talk nibble bet.
Who?
This guy, this rapper, they paid him $70 million just to get up on stage in front of millions of people
Who's
and
this
talk
guy?
nibble bet.
Who's it guy?
A rapper.
70 million?
70,
Wow.
70 million one
It's
year.
it's interference. It's
Just to get up in the middle way.
But I want to tell you something. The Satan is no longer involved in getting people to sin. He's now involved in, he has such dominion over man that he can get you to sin and make you look like an absolute fool. You know, it's a level of how stupid can you get, you know? It's like in your face. It's like, some guy says, okay, I got you. The Satan looks in your face and says, no, I got you totally. I will make you look like an absolute idiot. And the Satan's shlita over the nonsense of man is so total, so absolute, that mankind are a bunch of idiots. It's beyond belief that what they value is such absurd, and what they degrade has such worth. It's like a person wants to mock somebody. So he wants to say, hey, let me show you what I can do to you guys, And you just take a look, and so on. The Jews, who are the greatest creation ever made, are at the low level. They're at the bottom of the heap. And the absolute zeros of society, the celebrities, the ball players, the sports figures, all the politicians, the zeros of society, they're at the top. And they have the greatest chashivas, and so on. Now, so what does that indicate? It indicates the mockery that the Satan has of man. Not only will I show you that I can control and make you sin, right? I'm going to show you that you guys are such zeros, what I can make you do. As far as I'm concerned, it's the greatest enterprise, and he is the greatest businessman that ever lived. He took over a business to make people sin, and it's just beyond belief who he got to sin.
Is it fair to say his success is a reflection of our shortcomings?
Yes, it's only because
What
that.
do we
yeah.
do about that?
Well, what we try to do, is we try to do the mitzvahs, the oived. I mean, in the end, let's face it, he dies, we live. In the end. So obviously, in the end, he declares bankruptcy. I mean, that's what's going to happen. But don't take any pride in that. It's only because Leman Shemoy B'Avo. It's only because the Rebbe Shem says, hey, I'm not going to stand by and watch my kids get trounced on, Without that, it says, maybe Goel, God brings a Redeemer. Why? Because of the tzidkus of Klal Yisrael? No. Because Leman Shemoy B'Avo. The Rebbe Shem will not stand by and allow his name to be dragged through the mud, and that he violated his promise to the others. He won't do that. So therefore, it's what's called a built-in fail-safe mechanism. He's built in a mechanism that fail-safe. It's got to happen. So in the end, he's going to declare bankruptcy, and it's over for him, And we will, of course, have succeeded, get oil mahab and so on. But it's not because, it's because he interfered. He just pulled us right out of the pits. That's all. But anyway, so that was a comment with the monkeys. He's like, we're the monkeys. He's the zookeeper. Anyway, so therefore, this is the history. But in the end, Ramchal's now coming to the concept of Adam Rishon. And he's the first man, but he's the first Yisroel. That's really who he is. So in Adam is now the totality of man. Adam has everything a Jew needs to do the tikun, except he's not a Jew. He's not an Ivri. He is a Yisroel. That's the only difference, But Adam is far greater than just the Yisroel. He's the only Yisroel. He is the totality of man. In him is vested the entire operation, and so on. That's why who Adam was. May Adam Rishon, if he could do a mitzvah, he can undo the total tzimtzum. We can only do, each one is designated little parts. At my little area, your little area, where we could do tzimtzum, or undo tzimtzum, and then the ha'orah, the illumination shines through. He had the entire dial. That was his koyach. It's interesting what he was. It's interesting to meet him before the chet. What type of... And you see, he was so great that even the Malachim thought he was God. So they started singing shira to him. Can you imagine what this person was? It was something beyond belief.
In a certain respect, he was greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. In
a certain way, yeah, of course, yeah, sure. Initially, He was greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. What he knew, what he
You
experienced.
don't find people actually talking like I don't know, but it seems that like through gracious, people seem to be talking like Kadosh Baruch Hu as just discussion. It's not till you get to shmos that people have a nevuah and have.
Yeah. Well, Adam was so close to Moshe that, the Moshe just spoke to him.
I'm saying in the beginning it seemed like they were just like hi and turned around like what should I? Hashem said, what did you do? Oh well, I did it. It doesn't sound like a nevuah. It sounds like a discussion.
Yes. Yeah. But in any case, so the Ramchal is now setting up what are the conditions that you need for Adam to succeed, and ultimately speaking, that will be our conditions also. Anyway, that's what Ramchal is saying. Next week is the last year for this month, because then after that I go away. So if you guys want to Rectifying, we'll continue on who Adam was and what's really happening with Adam Rishon and so on. Any questions? No questions? Wow. Everything's so clear.
We haven't heard that bein lost it by a Torah haflaga?
Well, that's Avram, bris. Well,
That's really
I'll give you a remez.
Center?
I'll give you a remez. Beautiful remez. Bnei Yisroel says this. But the Moshe says to Avram Avinu says, "V'anochi offer ve'efer." I am offer, dust, ve'efer, and ashes. That's a remark of tremendous humility. Yeah, V'anochi offer ve'efer, I'm dust and ashes. So if you remember, if you think about it, when Klal Yisrael brought the 70 porim, 70 oxen, as a sacrifice on Sukkot, those represented the 70 nations. So Avraham Avinu said, "Anochi offer ve'efer." How do you spell offer? Ayin, pei reish, and efer is aleph pei reish. So Avraham Avinu says, originally I was just what? Efer, aleph par. I was only one ox. Now I'm ayin par. I'm now the 70. Nice premise, beautiful premise. Originally I was just one par. Means I was one facet 70. Now I'm 70. I'm the totality. That's why all nations will be blessed through me. Why? Why? Because I'm the only one who can do the tikun. So all nations have to wait for what? For their bracha, which is the proof that they can get a bracha. Not only as Gashmis, but also spiritually, but only through the Jew. That's what happened. See, that's our offer of Ephraim. Fascinating remnants.
You mentioned something before about animals.
Who?
Avi mentioned something before about animals. What do they have? And anyone who knows animals knows there's a lot more to them than just eating and walking around. I know there's a lot of different takes on Perek Shira, but is it possible they have an awareness of creation?
Well, more than that, according to Shlomo Melech, knew the language of animals. The real question is, are they speaking? What are they really doing? So, none of that, there's a language of trees. There's a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of communications going on beyond what we understand. You know what I'm saying? So the real question is, what is that?
Physical matter.
No, so what I believe is that the animals themselves have no language, the trees don't, and so on. What I believe is that they are conduits, that the Baruch Shem speaks through uses these as conduits. So it knows if a tree, let's say, has to say something, the tree will move one way, the wind will come. So that could be interpreted as a language, but it's a message from the Baruch Shem using these beings as the way of expressing. Shlomo Melech knew the language of the birds, the animals, the Ari knew the language of the clouds. Believe it or not, clouds have a language. Not that they're inanimate, but apparently how they form and so on is a language. It's a message from Shemayim. You see that constantly go on and so on and so forth. So Shlomo knew, the Ari knew the languages, it's obviously a tremendous chokhmah, the languages of the...
The example
Anyway.
you gave about Bell's theorem, remember,
Yeah.
the spooky act, all matter is not just physical material, possibly. It's suggesting that even on an atomic
Yeah,
level,
that's
there's
yeah.
something
We live in a
in
soup.
space.
We live in a soup. And the soup is the energy. It's a whole shield. Because from that you can connect physics to Kabbalah. what is energy really? It's interesting shir. That's not now.
Where do we ever get the card for the fact that the Gerim are really individuals?
Who?
Gerim are let's say Gilgulim or whatever, of individuals.
Of those people that would have joined, but as individuals, but not as a nation.
Would you say that from logically, or that's
No. I don't recall the source.
I heard it b'shem Zayar.
Maybe I don't recall the source. After a while, you just just forget where you get it from. It's like, so yeah, but that's they say that law like that. Anyway, so now we understand what a Jew is. We understand what his koyach is and so on. It's very important stuff. So next week.